Good
Hey,
afternoon.
oh, cool. You do the intro. I'm just getting my presentation ready.
Hello, and welcome everybody to another one of the hands-on training with me, Matt and Ellie. Um, we obviously started last week looking at Cinema 4D, and this is the continuation of that. We're going to be mainly focusing on modeling, but I will let Ellie bring up the presentation in a second, and she'll just go through the objectives with what we're doing.
Cool. I can do that now. Can you do me a favor? Can you ping the screen to me? Because
I
I'm.
can indeed.
Thanks.
Boop. There you go.
Here we go. Right. Cool. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes, said everybody.
Cool. Cool. Hi everyone. Yeah, sorry I wasn't prepped with the presentation straight away. It's lovely to see you all again. Thanks to everyone who is here live with us and everyone who's watching the recording as well. So yeah, as Matt said, this is week 2 with our hands-on with Maxon Cinema 4D Beginners Workshop. So just to quickly recap, what is kind of the purpose of this workshop in this series? It's to get you guys comfortable in Cinema 4D in just 6 weeks. So, you know, we're going through all the basics from 0 up to kind of like a nice beginner level, and hopefully give you the kind of the confidence and the ability to kind of get stuck in and make some stuff in Cinema 4D. So really quickly, understanding the course. So yeah, me and Matt had a chat about the 6 topics that we could do. And so last week was a getting started. So we went through, you know, primitives, deformers, like navigating inside of Cinema 4D. And so that base information that's going to help us for these next 5 weeks. Today, week 2 is all on modeling, and we're in good hands. And I hope Matt doesn't mind me saying this. I would say modeling is your specialty, right, Matt? You're like
That's the thing that
expert.
I enjoy the most. Yeah, I mean, I'm a sort of generalist all the way round, but modeling is the bit that if you had to pin me down and go, which bit do you want to do, it would be the modeling. I like taking things that either don't exist or pictures of stuff and then trying to create them in 3D. And I'm quite a fan of 3D printing as well, so I like trying to figure out how to make things printable and all fit and slot together from other stuff that I do. So yeah, I definitely enjoy the modeling side of cinema more than I do everything else.
Cool. So we're all in good hands, everyone. Don't worry. Next week, week 3, we're going to start making things look really nice inside of Cinema 4D. So we're doing some lighting and some materials. Week 4, animation and dynamics. So, you know, some really kind of fun and cool stuff inside cinema. Week 5, my most favorite week, all things MoGraph. And then we're going to round it off with some rendering. So let's get into what we're going to be doing today. So as I said, it's week 2 and it's all things modeling. So let's have a look at our session objectives. So the idea by the end of this session is you're going to know the different types of modeling. We're also going to learn how to model using splines and what splines are, and like the different generators, in particular extrude, lathe, sweep, and loft. We're also going to see how we can bring our own like splines or our paths from Adobe Illustrator inside of Cinema 4D. So we can, you know, if you've got your own logo or things like that, we can actually bring those in Cinema 4D and turn it into like geometry and make some cool stuff. We're also going to understand what subdivision surface modeling is and how we can do that, as well as learning about symmetry and how that works inside of Cinema 4D. And once we've learned all of that amazing stuff from Matt, we're then going to model our own shelf scene using all of these tools. So yeah, let's get started. Let's get into it. So once again, if you have any questions, so hi to everyone who's sort of saying hey in the chat. Like it's nice to love to see you all. Hey Edward, hey Anna, hey Ryan, hey Drake, and Lipa. Yeah. So any questions, just let us know. Kind of don't be shy. Don't be worried about it. Just drop them in there. We want it to be as interactive as possible with you guys, and we love answering your questions. You know, it's definitely our favorite part. So yeah.
And for those of you who are wondering, this session is being recorded, and it will be available in 2 different ways. So one is part of the registration link that you have used today. You should be able to go back and get the link. But equally, we have uploaded last week's onto our YouTube channel. It is in a private listing so that it is only really accessible for the people who are coming, and it's not just going to be thrown around everywhere. So Ellie, if you would be so kind as to find that link and put it in the chat if you haven't done so already.
Yes, definitely. What I'll do as soon as you get started, I'll ping some links in the chat for everyone, as well as the project file links for today.
Yep. Okay. So they'll all be available. And then a couple of hours after this one is done, because we need to do some processing just to the video, we will upload this as well. So this one should be uploaded latest probably tomorrow morning for the UK based time zone thing. Right. Okay. Let's get cracking then. I suppose
Cool,
I better
shall I
steal the
start
screen
with
back.
Right.
Where am I? Who am I? There I am. Oh, there I am.
Sent it.
Thank you.
Right.
Okay, so modeling. There are a few different ways of modeling, and I'm going to start with a few of the spline generation style modelings that will make life a bit easier, depending on the things that you want to create. I will be a little bit fast, I have to admit, because we've got quite a bit to cover today, as you've seen, and what we'll be creating with Elly, is going to take a bit of time. But of course, this is being recorded, so if you need to slow me down, you will be able to with one of the recordings that you will have available to you. But I'll try not to be too fast, and don't worry, you can still stop and ask questions. So that's, the fun of this part of it. So Cinema 4D S24, we have these things here called generators. There are a few on the right hand side which I won't be looking at, just purely for time constraints and the things that we're going to be looking at. But the ones that we're going to look at here on the left hand side are our spline generators. The first one we look at is an extrude generator. Now, if I create this, you can see there is absolutely nothing on my screen except the axis and the extrude generator object itself on the right hand side in my object manager. Generators, as their name suggests, will generate a shape based on information that they are given. Same way in real life, like an electricity generator will generate electricity based on fuel going in. Okay, so that's one of the things that it does. So what we're going to do is grab something that will be the fuel for our object, and that in this instance will be our splines. So what I want to do is grab one of my splines, and I'm going to make this an easy one. I'm going to grab a text spline, and you can see that I've got a text spline and something that says text spline, and it says the word text in the text spline box. Let's change that to something else. Let's change that to extrude. Now I've just changed the word. If I press enter, it will make another line. So don't press enter, just click off and it will update. I'm going to press H on my keyboard just to focus on my geometry. If you were with us last week, then you know what we did to make the bend deformers and the objects one and the other. We would put the bend deformer in the object. Okay, that's one way around. This way, we do something different, and it is like you would expect. With an electricity generator, which generates electricity, you put fuel in the generator. This is the same principle. So the text, being the spline, being the fuel, goes inside the generator. And for those of you that remember from last week, if you click and hold on your spline, you need to wait until the arrow points down, and then you will drop that inside, and boom, we have an extrude. Okay, so that is extruded. That is an extrude object. We can still change both of these things because they are both non-editable objects in that they're not polygonal. We can still change things. So if I want to change what my text spline says, hello, and then click off, then it updates. If I want to change how far my object extrudes, then I can go that way. I can even click and drag and go backwards as well if I particularly want to. So there's hours of fun doing this. I have caps as well, and they are the front and back of the extrude, and I can choose rounding, so you can see that I can round those out. And in my little preset library here, I've got a load preset. You can see I've got a few different types of pre-made caps that I can choose, and I can create them, and they can give a really funky look to my objects that I can extrude. So that's the extrude very quickly. Okay, have we got any questions so far? 3, 2, 1. No, good. Okay, so that's the extrude. Elly will be looking more into that obviously in a bit. I'm going to do File and New, and let's have a look at. Hello. Yes.
I was fully talking then, and I didn't realize I was muted. And then there was a countdown. I was thinking, am I not speaking? So yeah, no questions at the moment. A couple from Drake that we'll get to kind of a bit later on today.
Right. Okay. That's fair enough. So let's look at the second of our extrudes. Second of our generators. Get the words right. And that is my lathe. Now, the lathe generator, for those of you who may have a guess, a lathe is a manufacturing device used in real life, not just in 3D. It works with metal and wood, and you take a long piece of wood or metal, and then you stick pins in both sides, and then the thing rotates really, really fast. And then you use some form of sharp tool to draw along the edge as this thing spins, and you will shape that material into the thing that you want it to be, kind of like chair legs or banisters and things like that, stuff that has a very uniform process all the way around the outside. And that's what this does. This takes a profile, a shape that you make, and profiles it, sweeps it, rotates it, revolves it, many different words for the same thing, 360 degrees all the way around. You can see from the icon that the first example that it has is a vase. So just to quickly demonstrate, now just demonstrate, don't try and follow, for those of you that are trying to follow. If I use my pen tool like this, I'm going to just make a wine glass, a very odd wine goblet. The one thing that you should never, ever do is what I have just done, which is to use your spline tool in 3D, because you just don't quite know where it's going to put those points for you. So don't do that. So let's delete my spline. What you need to do is use one of the side or front views that we looked at last week. So I'm going to use my middle click or my F keys or the button up here, top right, click that, and then I'm going to use either the right or the front. Do not use the top, because if you use the top, you'll get a pancake. You just will, because it revolves around the Y axis. So you need to do something that will butt up against the Y axis. If you use the top down, it will just revolve and you'll get a pancake. So let's use the front view. Let's go to my spline pen. And for those of you who might be used to Photoshop and Illustrator and things like that, this is a path. Okay, so I'm just going to roughly guess this. I'm not going to try and be accurate at this point. So I'm going to create a starting point, and if you click and hold, you get the tangent handles to allow for curvature. You can see like this. I'm just going to do this, and then if you want a straight line, just click, and I can then do straight lines that way. Okay, once you are done, press Escape on your keyboard, and that will clear that for you. And then, as we've discussed earlier, we need to now associate one with the other. We take the spline, being the fuel, and pop it in the generator. Click and hold till the arrow points down, let go, boom. You can see I've got a wireframe view, so let's go to my 3D view, which is F1 on people's keyboards. And there I have my lathed egg cup, maybe not a wine glass, maybe a goblet, don't know. Oh, I've got some fun going on in there, and some fun at the top as well. Now, I did that deliberately. You may find, certainly as if you're doing it as carelessly as I was, that when you look, you have a hole in the top of your lathe. This is because this point is not exactly at 0. You can see if I turn off my lathe object using the generator green tick, I still have my spline, that my spline point is not at 0. I can keep nudging that a bit, but what I can actually do, I can select that point, and then in my X and Z, you need to make sure that both of these are 0. So Z is already 0 because it's the distance. X, I'll make 0, press enter, and that's now directly at 0, and I no longer have a hole in the top of my goblet of fire. The other side, however, we have the opposite issue, which is that I was so careless that I went the other side. So rather than having a hole, my stuff is clipping. You can see now I have a hole, now it's clipping, now I have a hole. Exactly the same principle, just make sure that the X and Z coordinates for those two are zeroed out, and I will get a nice rounded shape with no holes or gaps. The spline is still, as you've noticed, completely editable and changeable. So if I want to change this, I can change the spline. I can click and drag to add more points. So if I command click somewhere on the spline, I've got another point that I can add, and I have created some form of 60s lamp, don't know. Mushroom, not really sure. But either way, I'll put my teeth in today. You will be able to see that I can revolve this shape 360 degrees all the way around. Okay, anything else for that one? Any questions before I move on to the next one?
I will remember to unmute myself this time. So a quick question from ePage. Is there a secret method to know when to put the deformer? So I think this was relating to last week, perhaps. Is there a secret method to know when to put the deformer into the object versus putting the object into the deformer?
Yes, because it depends on which one you're using. Deformers, these over here, the blue ones, they go into an object you wish to deform because you are distorting a shape. So if you want to deform something, you say, I am a shape, deform with this. These are generators, both of these, and it's the color largely that you'll get away with. You'll figure it out. Blue is a deformer. It will deform. It needs to be a child. Green, which as you can see actually is quite a lot of these things, means that it is a generator, and you put things inside it to generate shapes out.
Thanks. Also, how did you view the top bit of your spline?
I just looked at it. I moved around with the camera. So using my Alt key, I just moved around to see where it was. I can turn my lathe off at any point, and then I can just view around my spline that way.
Cool, thanks.
That's right.
I think that's it for now.
Cool, right, let's move on. I'm actually going to skip that one just for the minute, and I'm going to go to the bottom one. Now, these little icons do actually give you some interesting indications. They obviously show you what they're going to do. White little square box thing is the spline, and then it shows you what it will generate. The white part of the lathe shows you the outline and then what it will generate. The sweep, let's drop. This has two little white lines. It has a profile and a path. That is because the sweep will use two splines. So let's create my sweep, and I'm going to create two splines. I'm going to create a circle. There it is, that was hard. And then I'm going to create a star, and I'm going to shrink the star using my scale tool. I'm just going to shrink it down to about that. Now, what this does is it takes a shape and it sweeps it round the other. And invariably, I have taught this, and everyone goes, eh? And then I show them the example, and I do this, and everyone goes, eh? Until I do this. Ah, everybody goes. So what happens is the star is being swept around the circle, which you can change and edit depending on the sizes of the things that you need to do. You can take your star and you can change your star sizes. You can see that that changes that. You can take the circle and you can increase its radius, and you can see that that gets bigger and it just sweeps its way around. So it's still not set. You know, I've still got the ability of adding and changing stuff. You've also got to be careful which way round these go as well. So if I take the circle and put that first, remember it sweeps A around B. So if I make my circle now much smaller, you can see that I have a circle now going around the star. Okay, so that allows you to use sweeps for all sorts of really interesting things that, to be honest, would have been really tricky any other way. I use it a lot for cables, wires, skirtings, covings, picture frames, all of those sorts of things that have a uniform profile that fit round a generic shape. Okay, any questions on that one?
Yes, we've got 2 questions actually. First one is, does a sweep automatically detect the best orientation for the sweep object?
Good question. Not necessarily. Depending on the orientation that your planes or your shapes are made at, you may get some interesting, that's a fun one, variance on a theme. So you need to check what plane your shapes are generated on and then switch between them just to see what will work for you.
Cool. Also another question, a quick question. How would you make a 3D dotted path? I know how I would make it. How would you make it? I wouldn't make it with any of this stuff. I would use the cloner.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. And then a tube, and then either clone it along a path to cheat that way. But there is no way of doing it with a sweep, is there? That I can. That's about as good as I get with a dotted line, I think, I'm afraid, in that.
Yeah, I would
Definitely wouldn't use a sweep for that. Yeah. If we get time, we might come back to that. If not, we'll take that as a list of interesting questions to look at another point, I think.
Cool. Final quick one. Paul is asking, can you bring in a vector path from Illustrator?
Yes, you can. And I was going to get to that just after I finished all of these.
You're ahead of us, Paul.
Okay, right, moving on. The last one that we're going to look at very quickly is the loft. Now, as I've already discussed, this shape has 1 spline, this shape has 1 spline, this shape has 2 splines, this shape has 3. This means that you can use as many splines as you want. Please ignore the fact that it says 3. You can't have an infinite number of splines on this, so it's just an idea. But what the Loft one does is it kind of treats the splines as a wooden frame, and then it tries to stretch a skin over the outlines of the wooden frame. So, for example, let's create a rectangle. Brilliant. Using the method that we were shown last week, I'm going to hold down Command or Control on your keyboard and click and drag the arrows, and now I've got 2. And then I'm going to put both of these in the loft, and I've just got to make sure I'm going in the right way. So that's number 1, that's number 2, that's fine. Let's take number 3, and I'm going to control drag, and I'm going to create another one, and I'm going to move it down. Woo, curvature. Okay, so if I turn off my loft, you can see that I have 3 splines going from square to square to square, and it's skinning them. Let's try something else. Let's try a circle and put that at the end of my loft, and now it's going to a circle. Brilliant. Let's try and be complicated. Let's go to a star. Drag and drop, plop. Oh, it's going to it, but it's inside there. So let's turn it that way. You can see, huzzah, that no matter where you put it, it will try and make a shape to it. It's making some interesting assumptions at the moment. We shall get to that in a second. Let's try going from a star to a flower, which is obviously a lot more complicated shape. So let's put flower at the end. Boom. Oop, missed. Don't make it a child of the star. Make it that. Ah, that is not a flower. If I turn off the flower, I have a star. But that's also a star. Now, the reason for this is the Loft Generator itself is given a certain number of subdivisions, certain number of points it has been allowed to convert one shape to another. In this instance, it's been given 16. which, as you can see, is nowhere near enough for it to figure out how to get from a star to a complicated shape like a flower. So let's just try increasing this. Interesting, not still what I wanted. Okay, you can see that it's trying, it's getting a bit blockier if I keep going up. Let's go crazy. Let's put 120 in. Ooh, there we go. Now we have something that looks a lot better. It's still got some funny shading, but that's more just a case of it trying to make stuff smooth. But you can see that it is now working its way from a a star to a flower. I was giving away what I was about to do, which is the fact that I'm going to create a cogwheel, which of course is an incredibly more complicated shape than a star and flower. And I'm going to put that at the very end. And you can see that I've got something cogwheely, but I've got nowhere near the detail that this has. So once again, I'm going to go to my loft and I'm just going to click and drag and whack up my subdivisions until they're something ridiculous, but the shape is what I want it to be. And these are all still movable, they're all still editable, they're all still resizable, even rotatable if you want to really change the shape that you're getting. And the loft will simply try its best to make it from one shape to the other. It's a bit of an odd one, but it is actually really useful when you start thinking of shapes that you can make in forms of like the wooden frames. Like, how can I strip this down and make it into something that can make this work? I mean, I've used it for chess pieces, I've used it for coffee cups, I've used it for toothpaste tubes and things like that, because it's quite quick to be able to piece these things together. Okay, that's another super fast one. Ellie, have we got any questions?
Yes, a couple. So Anna was asking, would you use that in morphing? And I was just about to ask whether it was going to be animated morphing or...
You could animate the splines themselves if you wanted to, so that you could make some form of interesting wobbly creation. That would be possible, yes.
Cool. Yeah, a few others coming in. Is there a limit to how many splines you can use with a loft?
Not that I'm aware of.
I've used a lot as well before.
I think it's a lot.
Yeah, not that we've come across yet.
No.
And then a couple just relating to the sweep. So Matthew was asking, how did you show the side of the star?
That was, oh dear, I must undo that. On my sweep, there is an end growth percentage. So this is something that you can animate as well. So you can animate your shape growing along the spline with your end growth, or the other way, start growth percentage. Whoop.
Cool, thanks. One last one. Can you control the rounding of the sweep?
The sweep depends on what shape it is that you are sweeping. So I am sweeping a circle all the way round. If I deleted that and I had a hexagon instead, which I will definitely need to shrink, then I would have a hexagonal shape all the way around. So the shape that is going round the sweep is entirely based on what the shape is you are sweeping around it.
Cool. Kind of same question for the loft. Can you control the rounding on the loft?
Yeah, there is a smoothing thing. As you can see, I've got a lot of subdivisions on the mesh U coordinate system, which is giving me a lot of rounding to get the shapes to get that. The isopram subdivision, sorry, mesh subdivision V will give me more smoothing to get like the joints between them a bit more smoother, if that's what they mean by rounding.
Yeah. I'll let you know if there are any other questions.
Cool, thank you. Let's look at Illustrator really quickly then, and then we will show how to bring in Illustrator files. Obviously, a lot of stuff is done in Illustrator. A lot of logos, a lot of artwork is done in Illustrator. So there is a useful way of creating Illustrator files as it slowly loads. Hello. Oh, please don't die. There we go. That allows you to create files that you can put then into Cinema 4D. Now, I'm going to do my traditional ability. As you can see, this is why I do 3D and not graphic design.
I love it.
It's good, isn't it? I mean, I'm dead in. Why can I not get a shape? What is going on with my Illustrator? There we go. Not quite what I had in mind. There we go. Look at that.
It was funny. I was in Illustrator earlier and I was trying to use Cinema 4D shortcuts. I was like, why is it doing in and out?
Why is it working?
Oh.
So as you can see, my graphic design skills are second to none. No one is as bad as I am. But we nonetheless have paths and different things that we need to do in order to get them into Illustrator, into Cinema 4D. Now, Cinema 4D will not recognize fonts that you can bring out of Illustrator. So we need to outline these first. So let's go to Object and where is it? I swear they keep moving stuff.
Can you right click and set some
create outlines?
Yeah, that's what I normally do.
Right, fair enough. So right click, thank you very much, and create outlines, and that will turn your text into actual splines of inside and outside. So it's no longer editable in the fact that I can change what it says easily, but I now have lines. The same way with this one. This was a very simple line with a stroke. Now it won't bring that in properly either. Cinema 4D will just read the original line and not the thickness of the stroke. So if you need that to have its thickness, then we need to right click, hopefully, if it's here or it's somewhere else again, to keep moving it. That's definitely up here. Object path, haha, see, outline stroke. So so go to Object Path Outline Stroke, and that will turn the stroke into an inner and outer line as well. And then we will go to File, and we will save as. This is the important part. We save to our computer, and we choose where we're going to put it, and let's put it on the desktop because I'm naughty, and let's call it Export. It's good, that isn't it? Now let's call it Logo. Let's make more sense. Then I click Save. This is the super important bit. Okay, you need to choose Illustrator 8. This is because it was the last particular version that used something which I always forget the name of, but a particular way that the fonts were created, the lines were created. So you need to click Illustrator 8 and then click OK, and then click OK, and that will convert everything, and then it will go away, and I will minimize that. And now on my desktop, I'm going to go this way, you will see that I have logo.ai. And you can see it doesn't say much in here. And if I just do File and New, and I'm just going to drag and drop my logo AI into here, you've got scale in centimeters, you've got connecting splines and grouping them, click OK, and there, voila, is my logo. And in theory, I should be able to put that in an extrude. Wow, that's super long. And I have that. For those of you who wanted to know how I did that, I selected my logo. If I hold down Option or Alt on your keyboard and create an object, it will automatically make that object a parent of the object you have selected. So because it saved me a click, I decided to do that. So you can see that I now have my logo in there which is a spline, which is technically still editable if I need it to be. Okay, there's the Illustrator import. Any particular questions on that one?
So 2 little tips from Kent and TJ. So Illustrator 8 was the last version to save as PostScript.
PostScript, that was the word, thank you.
And TJ was saying, don't forget about Cineversity's ArtSmart plugin. Can't live without it for Illustrator files. Best part is they don't need to be version 8. So 2 nice little tips there from the guys watching.
Yeah, as you can see, I don't even have, no, I don't have any of the Cineversity Toolbox stuff installed. That might be something to look at for future things. Ooh, webinar series, but we'll talk about that later. Yeah, for those people who have an active subscription, you do have access to Cineversity, which means you have access to Cineversity Toolbox, which you can download. CV ArtSmart allows you to import Illustrator files without the need for Illustrator 8. Thank you very much for the reminder. Okay.
Sorry, a couple more, if that's all right.
That's fine.
So Valentina was asking, can you show how you imported the AI file again, real quick?
Oh, you can just do File and Open, or I simply nearly dropped my laptop, click and drag the file into Cinema, and it says, do you want me to open it? Yes. Okay. And there it is.
Cool. Also, is there a way to prepare your Illustrator file so that on import into C4D, it comes in at World Center? So I think it's, if it's centered in the Illustrator file.
That's a very good question. So
yeah, Nicholas is saying if you center the Illustrator object on the top right corner of the page, it comes in at 000 coordinates.
That I did not know. Top right hand corner of the page.
Sorry, left.
Okay, the other right.
The other right.
Let's try that. I'm curious. I normally just work it afterwards, to be perfectly honest, but let's have a look. Oh no, don't save, idiot. Save as, logo copy, save, replace, Illustrator 8, okay, Cinema 4D, that, logo copy, bang, okay. Sort of. It comes in, oh, I suppose. So the top left-hand corner, it seems, meets the top left-hand corner of the center. Sorry, yeah.
Looks like it, yeah.
Yeah, but it doesn't bring the logo in at 0. So what you can do, you can still select that, and then I would press the reset PSR, what's it called now? Reset transform button to put it in world 0.
Also, another quite cool one is for the Illustrator import, if you want to extrude logo differently to, so you know you've got the outer and then you've got the word logo. If you wanted to kind of extrude them differently, how would you unjoin them in your single spline?
What do we want to unjoin them, or do we want to import them differently?
So I guess they're the 2 different ways. So you could import them as AI files separately.
So when I drag and drop, yes, I'll click OK. I've got connect splines and group splines. If I untick those 2 and click OK, I will now have each individual section, and including individual letters as well. So I can put that group, if I put that group into an extrude, you'll see that it doesn't do anything because it's 2 splines, and Cinema 4D doesn't understand that the outside and the inside are the same object. So what I need to do is I need to take my group 6 and I need to use a new type of generator, and new in the fact that I haven't told you about it yet, the connect. So holding down Alt with my group 6 selected, select connect, and that puts all of these into a single thing, which Cinema 4D recognizes as this is one object, and then extrudes it. And then I can do the same either with individual letters if I wanted to, or I could take the whole word group, put that into a connect and then put that connect into an extrude, and then I've got the ability of changing the two, or having the two different things entirely separate. Okay.
Cool.
Right. My list of things. It's looking like we need to look at now box modeling, don't we?
Yeah.
Okay. So very quickly, well, not that quickly, but one of the biggest ways of modeling inside Cinema 4D is what we call box modeling. And funnily enough, it's called that because we start with a box. And here it is. At the moment, and as we've discussed before in our previous sessions, this box does not allow you to do much other than change the height, width, and depth of the cubes itself, and you can round the edges a smidge. We obviously looked last week at deformers and changing them slightly and moving them around, but what if I really wanted to get into the nitty-gritty of this object and I wanted to change it so that I had access to the polygons, points, and edges of this object? And I can do that with this button up here, which is the Make Editable button. Equally, you can press C on your keyboard, and you'll notice several things change. So my orange handle's gone. Okay, I can't change that size anymore because it's no longer what they call a parametric object. The object settings here have gone. The height, width, and depth and the fillet all disappeared, not there. And my little logo up here that was a cube is now a blue triangle with white dots that says this is a polygonal object. And for those people who wondered last week, will I ever show the structure menu? Here is the structure menu. It shows you the points of your object and the relative position of those points to its central axis. So you can see that's why some are 74 minus and 74 positive, because it's the other side. It's probably the only time you'll ever need to look at the structure menu unless you're getting to the really nitty-gritty of modeling. So we shall ignore that for now. But what it means on the left-hand side, we've mainly just been using this, which is to move my object around. But what I can do now, it's allowed me to use these three on the left-hand side. I can go to points, and I can select a point, and I can move a point around. I can go to edges, and I can select an edge, and I can move an edge around. And funnily enough, I can select face, and move faces around. And this really gives me the opportunity to start changing the shape a lot more than I was able to do before. Now, as lovely as that is, I am still currently limited to the fact that this thing only has 6 sides. But there's a whole load of useful modeling tools that we will have access to. And they exist here under right click, and you can see a whole host of nice fun things. And you can see tools up here as well that you can use. But in order to make life easy for certainly beginners, I would recommend going up to the top right hand corner and changing your layout from startup to model. And the reason for that is because it puts a whole nice bunch of icons down the bottom that look very inviting to press, and a whole load of selection things along the top that give you more options to make life easier and gives you more of a view to do it as well. So there are a few different ways of giving us more geometry in an object like this. One of them is this button here. Okay, it says extrude selected. So let's press that button, and you'll notice on the attributes manager on the right hand side, I have some information. I'm just going to move that up so I've got access to my buttons down the bottom. This says offset, which is how far do you want to extrude it. Let's make that 50. And then let's click apply. And you can see my little polygon extrudes out 50. It's not moved the original. If I move this, that's what that does. If I grab the handles, it moves. So let's move that up. And then let's press new transform again. Boop. you can see that that creates more geometry. So my cube now has 3 polygons across, still only 1 high, still only 1 that way, but 3 along the x-axis. If I wanted to increase this, because I'm using the extrude tool, I can, and this is in effect moving it. I can choose variations, I can choose subdivisions as well. So you can see that it is subdividing the extrude for me. That's a really useful one. I'm just going to reset that back down to 0. If I wanted another one, I'll click New Transform, and there it is. It creates another length that I can move up or down or change the scale of if I wanted to. I could even rotate, so let's point that up. If I want to go back to the extrude tool, there is a shortcut, which is D on the keyboard. That's D. And then I can click apply. And funny enough, look, I've created another new transform. There it is. So I'm making this really weird and wonderful shape here using these tools. Another really useful tool is the one to the right of this, which is Extrude Inner. This tool takes the polygon surface that you have selected and creates a polygon on the inside of it. So that's made a shrunk down version. So I've got the 4 polygons around the outside, and then I have a small one in the middle. And let's press D on my keyboard and do apply. Huzzah. And I've got another one. The shortcut for inner extrude, funnily enough, is I. If you want to know what polygon extrusions are, shortcuts are for some of these things, hover over them and you will see that it will give you the 2 different types, which is M, W. M brings up the modeling menu, and then I can press W to change it, to use it, or I can just press I, which is the direct shortcut. So let's do another small one, press D, click apply, and now I'm getting this strange gradiated, or rather stepped extrusion coming out. Another one, tool that's very useful to use is the one to the left of that, which basically combines the 2. That will extrude it out and scale it in, so I end up with bevels on things. And you can see that I can click on any surface once to select it and then use the tool. Click in a blank space, click and hold, extrude. Click, blank space, click and hold with my left mouse button, and I move my mouse from left to right to get these extrusions and bevels on my strange deformed chocolate bar thing. Okay, any questions on some of that so far? Modeling is huge, so there will possibly be a lot of questions, and I'm only going to be able to cover a few of them.
None at the moment.
Oh, sweet. Everybody knows everything. I'm an amazing teacher. Anyway. End sarcasm. What about if we've got somebody that's done all...
Just had a little quick one in, if that's okay.
Of course.
Button is the extrude options again, please?
D. D, or that one. So the question is, as well, the next one, what if you've got these things that you've created and you want to add more geometry into an area that you can no longer kind of extrude into? We have 3 options here that give you that. They are the line cut tools, or the cut tools specifically, and there are 3 different modes. You have loop cut, and loop cut's really useful because you can see if I choose this one, which I can get to by pressing U and L. Please note that these shortcut menus, the 2-letter shortcut menus, are not clickable. If I press U and move my mouse to try and press the next one, it will just keep disappearing. They are a shortcut menu. So you press U on your keyboard, you then look at what the next shortcut letter will be, and I'm going to choose L, and that's loop select. But if I choose my knife tools, which I want to do, I'll do K. And you can see that I've got a much smaller menu to choose from because now I'm only choosing my knife tools, line cut tools. So press K, and if I press K again, this is the, no, KL, sorry, my fault. If I choose the loop, you can see if I hover over one of the edges, if I hover over a polygon, nothing appears. If I hover over an edge, I now have a white ghosting line that lets me know where this will cut. And I can just click my mouse and I can create it. If I want more of those, I can use this little widget up here and press a plus sign, and then I've got 2. And it will space them equidistantly, but I can maneuver those via a percentage by selecting these little things at the top and shifting them around, which is really cool. When I am done, I can just press escape and it will finalize those, and I now have those loops all the way around. I can even do it here. Now, it doesn't do it in a straight line. It does it in a percentage fashion depending on the size of the polygon. So if I click here and I make this 20-ish%, it's not in a straight line all the way down, but it is 20% along that, or 25% rather, 25% along that, and 25% along that. Doesn't matter what size they are, it will always be 25% along the width of that polygon. So that's the loop cut, which is incredibly helpful. You have the plane cut, and this does do a complete straight line. So if I just do this, you can see that it's got a start and a finish, and I can move the finish around, I can move the start around. If I move my camera view, it turns itself into a gizmo. And this gizmo can be moved, rotated, and finalized before you are ready to cut it. And this, you may have noticed, also updates over here on the right hand side, so I can adjust the rotations here as well if I want to be more precise. And again, press escape, or no, click off, sorry, and it finalizes that plane cut, which does all the way through. And last but not least is my line cut, which allows me to just basically click and drag and do things like that. The question, I know that I'm going to get that one, is how do I do a curved line? And the answer is you can't. Not with the knife tool. Okay, so you can't click and hold to get a curvature. You are only left with straight lines. Okay, and they are the cut tools that allow you to add in more geometry when you are working in an area that you need to get more geometry to play with. Any questions?
Not at the moment.
Okay, right, I'm just conscious of time, so I need to look now at SDS modeling, and I'm going to make something very interesting. I'm not going to use the symmetry in this one, but I will do it in a second. SDS modeling is very similar to box modeling, except we use something called a subdivision surface, SDS. If I create that and I just put my cube in it, I end up with this strange rounded thing. You're looking at me going, what on earth? Right, let's have a look. Yeah, that's it, that's me done. So let's create a cube and let's create a subdivision surface. And again, it's a generator, and it's this one here. It's not a spline generator, it is a shape generator. And I'm going to put the cube in there. I'm not making the cube editable at this point. I've just got a subdivision surface. You can see that it has rounded this shape out. What it means by subdivision is it takes the surface, which for the cube was 1 by 1 by 1, so there's only one segment in each direction. Let's show that by going to display and then ground shading lines. So it's that display in your viewport and then ground shading lines, and you can see I've now got little black outlines that show where my polygons are. If I turn my subdivision surface back on, I now have a lot more black lines than I did before. It's now subdivided by 4 because the subdivision editor is twice for editor and renderer. So it subdivides it. Let's take these back to 0 and then let's do 1, and you can see that it subdivides. So it basically halves it. You've got subdivision all the way around. making it 2 by 2 by 2. If I subdivide it again, then it halves those subdivisions. So I've now got 4 by 4 by 4. If I do it a third time, I've now got way more than I can count. So we're now 8 by 8 by 8. And of course, if I did that again, would be 16 by 16 by 16, but then Cinema starts to moan. So let's just stick with 2 for the moment. And I'm going to make sure my renderer says 2 as well. These are not particularly clickable because my cube is still not editable, but I can change my shape. I can make a tablet or a bar of soap or a very strange whoopee cushion, but it's a bit blocky. What I can do with my cube, as we looked at last week for changing segments when using deformers, I can increase the segments that exist on my cube. So this is the cube I have selected. If I turn off my subdivision, I've now made my cube 2 by 2 by 2. If I add my subdivision, of course, this will subdivide that 2 again. So I'm getting more information. But because I've got more segments in the original, what they call cage, I'm getting a blockier shape. Okay. If I want to start really changing this, I'm going to select my cube and make my cube editable, not the subdivision surface, just the cube. So with my cube, press C, you can see that my subdivision surface still has its green out icon, which is what I need. And then I can select my cube, and then I can go to my polygon faces on the left, and I now have access to the larger of the polygons. This is the polygons that actually exist on my cube. I can't access the little ones as is. They are what the subdivision surface generator is creating to create the smoothing. But it does mean I can use all of the tools that I was using a minute ago. So let's go to extrude, let's click and drag. Remember, don't grab the handles. Click and drag in an empty space, and I am creating something. Okay, and I can use a bevel and I can extrude that out, bevel that out, and I can round that to create this strange vacuum thing. Then I will use my selection tool, which can also be 9 on the keyboard, my paint selection, click and hold, and I'm going to select 4 of those faces. I'm going to go to my extrude inner, and I'm going to click and drag from left to right. Sorry, right to left makes it smaller, right, left to right makes it bigger, and I can expand that out. Great. Then let's go to my extrude and extrude that out again. And I haven't the faintest idea what I'm creating here, but it looks like some form of robo elephant. But this is the way subdivision works. So if I turn off subdivision, I can see the cage underneath, the blocky cage, and the difference in information that you get when creating something under subdivision surface. So let's create another example super fast. And I'm going to create a cube, and I'm going to create a subdivision surface. And I'm going to make my cube editable before I put it in my subdivision surface to make sure I'm not going to do anything crazy. And then I'm going to put the subdivision surface in the cube. Okay, so I'm going to give you about 5 seconds to catch up with me if you are trying to follow this along. You make sure your cube is editable and in the subdivision surface. And then I'm going to go to my polygon tool, polygon mode on the left, select my cube. You need to make sure it's the cube you select, and select the front. I'm going to press D on my keyboard to extrude, and I'm going to change the offset to 200 and press enter or return on your keyboard, and that does an extrude out. So you should have this capsule shape with 2 polygons long, 1 polygon high, 1 polygon wide. I'm then going to select my scale tool, which is T on your keyboard if you so wish to do it. Click and drag in an empty space and get to about 30%. And you can quantize that, force it to go 5-degree increments by pressing Shift after you start scaling down. And I'm going to get to about 30. There you go. I've got this strange tear-shaped object now. Then I'm going to press D, and I'm going to press New Transform. Now I have this strange pointy thing. Okay, I can see you guys going, what on earth is he modeling? You'll find out in a second. Then I'm going to select the back. So you've got the side that you've just made a lot smaller, and then I'm going to select the back. And then I'm going to press New Transform to get another one, New Transform to get another one, New Transform to get another one. So my polygons are now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then I'm going to press T on my keyboard to get to my scale tool, click and drag, hold shift and get to about 30%. What on earth is he making, I hear you say? Then I'm going to press D on my keyboard and I'm going to press apply and I'm going to get a little bit of an offshoot there. And then I'm going to press New Transform again. So I've got this strange, I don't know what that is. I know what it's going to become, but we'll get there. Then, using my move tool, just because it's easier, I'm going to select the side of what I've just created, look around the other, holding shift, click on the other side to get both sides. So just again, using my move tool, or E, select one of the small sides, look the other, hold shift, click that side. So I've got two sides selected. Then I'm going to press D on my keyboard. I'm just going to click and drag in an empty space until I get to about 250-ish. I'm not worried too much about that being exact. And then I'm going to grab the blue handle, the blue axis handle, and move it back. Okay, what on earth am I making? Then I look underneath my creature. Using my move tool, I'm going to select the belly, yes, of this. So first polygon, second polygon, third polygon from the front, underneath. Press D on your keyboard. I'm going to change my offset to 50 and press enter. And that gives me a little bit of a stomach there. And then same principle, select one of the sides you've just created, shift select the other side that you've just created, and then I'm going to click and drag and extrude it out about 180-ish. So I'm starting to create this interesting shape. With my scale tool, I'm going to grab the blue handle again. This time I'm on the scale tool, so I'm not going to move these yet. I'm going to click and drag the blue handle inwards until about 10%. Then I'm going to go to my move tool and move them backwards. This is looking a bit fishy, isn't it? And then I'm going to grab the green handle and move them down a bit. Sorry?
That's got to be a pound in the jar.
That's it. That's a pun jar. Yes, I'm afraid so. Of course, we all know that what I'm creating is not a fish. For those of you who were wondering, I am creating a dolphin, sort of. It will not win any awards for anatomical correctness, but it is nonetheless dolphin-y shaped in a very short period of time. Even to the point where I've got those things there. Let's select an edge now. Let's select that one and move it up. And very quickly, we're able to get organic shapes without too much effort. Obviously, there's a lot of movement and maneuverability in what I can do here to get this a little bit more shapely, including one of these called a loop selection. And I'm going to loop select this. So down here, loop select, shortcut, U, L, select that one, hold down T on your keyboard and click and drag, because holding will allow you to quickly use the tool without changing it. So my T button is still select or pushed down on my keyboard, let go of my mouse, let go of T, and I'm back on my loop select tool so that I can select that one, hold down E, which gives me the move tool, and move that back. You can see it's really quick in being able to create and move organic shapes of some sort. Let's just super quickly go to my polygon mode, go to my move tool. Let's pick that one, that one. Let's go for that one. Let's go for the 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth one across. I'm then going to press W on my keyboard. Not W. I don't know where I got W from. And then click and drag from right to left to create this strange block. Then with my scale tool, grab the red handle and squidge it until it's about 20%. Press D on your keyboard, click and drag to extrude up, T to scale, E to move. And there we go. I have my amazing dolphin of joy and wonder. I mean, we can do a lot of shaping here. We can make stuff a bit better. Let's go to my rectangular selection. So up here where your selections are, click and drag to get rectangular selection. And I'm just going to select all of those polygons and move them down a bit. Maybe select all of those polygons and move them down a bit instead. And just super fast, I now have some form of organic creature that any other way would have been difficult to create. And you can see just what the subdivision surface does, because if I turn that off, I end up with, I'm not quite sure what that is, but it's amazing to see what you can do by swapping from the subdivision and not, and what the subdivision allows you to create.
We have a few questions.
I know. Yes, of course.
That's cool. Yeah, quite a few. So really quickly, could you grab the primitive cube, drop it in a subdivision, make it editable, and then show how you get it to the point where you can then start kind of messing with it? So I think people kind of missed that very first part when you kind of started with the cube. And
okay, so create a cube. And it doesn't matter which order you do this in, really. So create a cube and make it editable. Press C. So now I have access to its points, edges, and polygons. I'm then going to go up here and create a subdivision surface. If I click and hold, I can choose it, but the button itself will create one. So if I press that, boom, it will create a subdivision surface. Then take your cube and click and drag it into the subdivision surface, and I can now select the polygons of my cube, which will allow me to start extruding stuff out.
Cool, thanks. So when you're extruding in the subdivision surface, your cage has like a faint blue line. Anna's asking, how do you see that cage?
That faint blue line should normally be there. So if I extrude, I haven't done any, this is default. So ground shading lines, you need to make sure that you select your cube and those lines will be there.
Cool, thanks. Also, could you, two relating to shortcuts. So you know how you got the shortcut menu to pop up?
Yes.
Could you show how you did that quick?
Well, we've got a lot of shortcuts. We have some direct shortcuts, and then we have some shortcut menu pop-ups. If I press M on my keyboard, that gives me the modeling tool keyboard shortcuts. So M brings me this menu, and then I would choose the next letter to press to bring up that tool. So you can see, and if I move my mouse, it's going to disappear, so I can't point at things. You can see that there is a list here that if I press A, it will create point. If I press B, it will create a bridge. If I press D, it will go to close polygon hole. All the way down the bottom, if I press W, it will do extrude inner. So if I do T, it will press extrude. So if I now press T, it puts me to the extrude tool. If I press M and then W, it will give me the inner extrude tool. There are quite a few of these little menus. M is one of them, and this gives me the modeling ones. U will give me some selection ones. So I can press U and W to select connected, which is different from M and W, which will give me a tool. K will bring up the next 3 that I can press for the line cut. N will bring up the display settings. So I can do N and A for Gouraud shading, N and B for Gouraud shading with lines, but that won't show anything while that's selected. I can do N and G for wireframe if I particularly want to, which is always trippy to make people try and figure out what we're looking at. But N and A, they are the keyboard shortcuts. If I wanted to say M and then you know, different tools I can use, T, it will take me to that.
Do you know if we have a list of them all anywhere?
Good question. Technically, we used to actually give away that little cardboard thing when people bought physical copies, didn't we?
Today with DVDs.
Keyboard, way there it is.
There we go. Homework for next week.
That's it. There'll be a test. The fun thing, of course, is that you can also completely customize all of your shortcuts to be what you want by going to Window, Customization, Customize Commands, find the command that you want, Extrude, oops, if I spell, and then clicking on it and then creating a shortcut for it. So you can create all sorts of shortcuts for anything that you want ever. Okay.
Cool. One more quick one.
Yep.
Are you adding more polygons by adding more subdivisions, or are you doing that to the cube?
Adding more subdivisions to the generator when I create this is just creating more subdivisions that allow for a smoother transition. The generator is thinking about it, but there isn't any on the cube. If I look at my dolphin, I'm still going to call it a dolphin, you will see that if I take my cube away from my subdivision surface, so I don't even have it in anymore, I've just removed it, all of the geometry that I have made is on what was the cube. And then I can just grab a subdivision surface at any point, drag and drop the cube in to get the rounding. And I can increase the smoothness. You can see that does make a bit of a difference. To the smoothness of some of these sections. Okay. Right, I best throw this over at you now, Elly. For other questions, I will now be on the chat, so I will be doing what I can to talk to people. So let me throw this at you.
Cool. Yeah, there's a couple of questions in there.
Okay. There you go. Now Elly is going to do the fun part and show you what you can actually do with all of these tools.
No, that's really cool what you're showing. Thanks for showing it all.
That's all right.
Yeah, really interesting stuff. Right, okay, so let's now put a whole bunch of that stuff. Let's get rid of my camera, I don't want to see that. Yeah, so let's all the stuff we've just learned, let's now create our own shelf scene, and that's, you know, in the project files as well. But yeah, by all means, follow along while we make it from scratch. So I'm just going to go into a new project, and we're going to start off straight away by just creating the shelf. And we're going to do that, and we're going to use a couple of little tricks that's going to help us to build this really quickly. So we're going to start off with a cube, and we're going to kind of make this just out of some primitives. So it's all like some stuff that we did last week. So I'm going to keep, so also really quickly, just to make it a bit clearer, I did actually increase my display. So hopefully that's a little bit easy to see. I also increased my cursor size, and you can now see it's got the little ring around it. And whenever I left click, it's going to be red, or I click and hold, and that's now it's going to stay red because I'm holding down my left button. And then right click is blue. So I'm hoping it makes things like a percentage easier to kind of follow along with. Cool, so let's get back to our cube and making our shelf. So we're going to leave our X size at 200. But our Y, we're going to kind of have, this is going to be the thickness of our shelf. So we want this like a lot smaller than 200 centimeters. So I'm going to put that as 6 centimeters. So we've now kind of shrunk that down. And then my Z size, this is going to be like the depth of our shelf. And I'm going to put that as 60 centimeters. So our cube is 200 by 6 by 60. And that's what we're going to go with. And straight away, I'm going to add a bit of a fillet because our shelf at the moment has this really kind of sharp line. And if you look at like the things around you, you'll see that everything kind of has like a natural bevel or a little bit of rounding. So I'm just going to switch this fillet option on. But 3 centimeters is way too big for what we're doing. So I'm actually going to do 0.3. So this is our shelf. These are the settings that we're going to use. Cool. So in our original scene, we've got 3 shelves, and there are a couple of different ways we can do this. So, you know, we could duplicate our cube, so our original shelf, by doing our, you know, our command click and kind of dragging, and then, you know, we have our second shelf. But let's say we have a whole load of these same shelves, and we've done this kind of command and clicking to duplicate them. And then let's say someone goes, oh, okay, I think like the thickness it's too thick, it needs to be like thinner. And so you have to go, oh, okay, I have to go through all my cubes and, you know, change the size of them all. Well, there's a little tip that we're going to use, and it's called instancing. And we can actually instance our original cube to create duplicates. And then the benefit of this is we can then change our original cube and it's going to update the rest of them. So like it's okay like this. I've only got, you know, 3 shelves, so it wouldn't be a massive deal. But, you know, if you're working with quite a few objects, then it's going to be super handy. So I just deleted that second shelf, that second cube. We don't need that anymore. And this is my first one. So I've got my cube selected. So I've clicked it, and I know it's selected because it's turned orange, and we've also got, you know, this orange outline in our viewport. And if we come to this first kind of green icon, and we're going to click and we're going to hold it, and this is where, you know, we have our subdivision and we have our symmetry, but we also have this instance option. And so I'm going to let go of my mouse, and then straight away now we have this cube instance. And so when we look at the attributes, we don't have our normal cube settings, like we haven't got our like our object properties or our fillet or anything. We only have this reference object, and it's referencing our cube. And so this is super handy when it comes to, you know, creating multiple of the same object. And so what we can do, I'm going to just sort of reposition my cube instance. So I'm just going to push it up on the y-axis by 50 centimeters. So I'm going to grab my green axis handle. I'm going to hit my shift key, and I'm just going to pull it up, and I'm going to go 50 centimeters. Cool. So we have our second shelf. So now, because this is a cube instance, we can just duplicate our cube instance. And so we can just do our command click now. And so this is still referencing the original cube. And then we're going to push it up again, another 50 centimeters. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to grab my green axis handle, hit my shift key, and with both held down, I'm going to just pull it up 50 centimeters. So now we have our 3 shelves. And this is where, you know, the instancing trick is great. So if I go back to my original cube, so you don't have to worry about doing this bit, this is just me showing you how the instance works. If I grab my original cube, and you can see it's the original one because of this kind of, it's still got the primitive cube icon, and we've still got all of our settings down here. And let's change the kind of the depth of my shelf to 40 centimeters. And what you'll see is it's actually changed the depth of both my cube instances as well. And so instead of having to worry about kind of duplicating my shelves in like the traditional way and then adjusting the size of every single one, the cube instance just does it like there and then for us. So it's a super handy trick if you've got, you know, like a whole bunch of the same object in your scene. Super handy instancing. Cool. Right, so let's just make the kind of like the back like wall brackets of the shelf, and then it's done. And again, we're going to grab a cube. Good old cubes coming in handy today. And then let's have a look at some settings. So this time we just want this sort of like this like small little cube that's going to be like nice and long. So I'm going to change my X to 5. My Y, I'm going to change to 150. And then my Z, I'm going to change to 5. And so these are the settings which gives me this size here. Cool. Again, I'm just going to add a little bit of rounding. So I'm just going to sort of pop that in there. And I'm going to go 0.3 on my radius again. Cool, right, so that's not centered. Let me just center that quickly. And let me just, there we go. Just centered those out because that's going to come in handy. I must have accidentally moved it. Right, okay, cool. So now what we want to do, because we want this to be kind of in the middle of our shelf, I know that my middle shelf was up on the Y by 50 centimeters. So we can do the same thing here. So, you know, we're going to click, hold shift, and we're going to pull it up by 50 centimeters. And so it's going to be nice and in the middle of my shelf. And then we just want to kind of pull it back here because we don't want it to be, you know, going through our shelves. And I'm going to go to my 4 views and I'm going to get my right view and I'm going to go real close just so I can kind of position this a little better just by eye. Cool. Right, there we go. So what we're going to do now, so we could, you know, use instancing again for this because I want 2 of them kind of like either side of my shelves. So we could instance it and move them, or we could use symmetry. So why not take advantage of using another tool inside of Cinema 4D? So I'm going to go into that same first sort of like green icon menu, and I'm going to grab the symmetry. And the way the symmetry works is we need to tell the cube and the symmetry to work together. So at the moment, they're not in line, they're not like with each other, like the branch isn't coming off at the symmetry. So the hierarchy isn't right. So if I grab my cube and I'm clicking and I'm holding down, I'm going to make it a child of my symmetry. And so we can't see anything yet, and that's because our cube is dead center. But with my cube selected, I can actually move it along. And our symmetry is, you know, is working. It's using the symmetry tool to create the same object on the opposite side. And we're just going to set the position just so it's nice and precise to -75. And it's going to do the same thing, but it's going to be +75. If we look at our symmetry, we can see our mirror plane is correct because it's set to ZY. But depending on what you're doing, you know, you might need one of the different options. So we could have it looking like that, which looks quite cool, actually. But, you know, we're going to stick to that. Cool. Okay, so this is our shelf unit. So I'm just going to grab all of my elements and I'm going to press Option and G, and it's going to group them all together. And we're going to call this our shelf unit. So we've now got all of those elements inside of this null. So we just grouped them and named them to keep them safe. Right, so the first thing we're going to work on, so let's grab, so first thing we're going to work on is this sort of like Maxon block text here. So it's going to look cool. So first of all, we need to grab a spline for this, which we can extrude. And the spline we're going to use is going to be a text spline. So we have a whole bunch of splines, just like Matt showed us inside here, a bunch of like default ones, and we've got our spline pen, which is going to come in handy in a little bit. But if we grab our text spline, this is going to come in. It's pretty big, but we can size this down, so it's not a problem. So inside my text spline, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change the text. And so you can write whatever you want in here if you're following along, but I'm going to write Maxon. Cool. And my font, I'm just going to change this to something that's going to be quite like quite blocky. We've got to imagine this was maybe like carved out of wood. So we've got these nice like wooden blocks. So I'm going to go like Russo 1. So we've got this nice kind of blocky text. Okay, so by default as well, our alignment is set to left. And so that means our axis is to the left of our text. This is just a personal preference of mine. I like to set my alignment to the middle because I like my axis to be dead center of my text. But that, you know, it's just something that I do. Our height is the size of our text. So let's set this to something like 40 because it's going to, at the end of the day, it's going to be sitting on one of our shelves. So 200 Definitely too big. Right. Okay, so you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to hide my shelf unit. So with these little buttons here, with the top one, if I click that twice, it will just hide our shelf unit, but we can bring it back later. Right, so we've got our text, but what I've noticed is there's a little bit of kind of weird intersecting going on, and you guys might not have this. This is, chances are it's just because of the font that I've used, but if you do, there's a way we can fix this. So we don't want this to overlap, because when we extrude it, our kind of like our extrude and our polygons are going to be kind of intersecting, which isn't something that we want to do. So, you know, we can change the horizontal spacing. So we could, like, you know, change that until that's separate. But the problem is now there's like a bigger gap between the other letters than there is between the A and the X. So that's not really going to work. But there's another way we can do it. We have this kerning option inside of the text spline. And if I just check this button here, so we're just down here, we check that, we can see we have all of our individual letters and this kind of strange little GUI. What I can do now, I can actually click my X and I can pull it along. And so it's not affecting anything else, but now we don't have that intersecting occurring. So that's a great little trick if you're using a font that maybe kind of has not come in as well. Right, okay, so now we need to grab our generator, because at the moment we haven't got any geometry. We've only got our text spline, which we can't render. So let's use one of the generators that Matt showed us earlier. And we're going to use the extrude. So we're going to end up making something with all 4 of these today. But my first one is going to be my extrude. And what we need to do, we need to make sure my text spline is a child of my generator. So I'm going to grab my text spline, and I'm going to drag it, and I'm going to drop it in my extrude, and we can see now we have our arrow pointing into our square. So if we go like this, it's pointing kind of to the left, which is what we don't want. We want to make sure it's pointing down, and this implies that it'll be made a child of this other object or tool. Cool. So we can see it's working because we now have some 3D geometry inside of our viewport. So if we come to our extrude, we have under the object tab a couple of different options here. So we have our direction, which is set to auto. So it's automatically going to decide and figure out which direction, you know, the offset and the extrude needs to happen, which is super handy because it didn't always used to do that. Our offset is, you know, our size or our depth or, you know, whatever. So we can, you know, adjust this to our own specific taste. I'm going to set it to a value of 6 centimeters. So just set 6 in there. Right, now let's get right in here for this next bit. This is one of my favorite parts of the extrude. We have this caps tab. If we select that, we now have, it's kind of like the fillet option inside of the primitives, but times about 1,000,000. So it's like a super cool way of creating some really interesting looking designs and bevels on your extrude or on your text. So if we drop this down, we have a couple of different bevel shape options. We have round, curve, solid, and step, all have their different features and functions. So if I select round, so this is kind of like your default bevel rounding. And if I put a value of maybe 1 centimeter, we can see that we now have this kind of rounded bevel. And, you know, we have our segments sort of similar to how we did when we were doing the fillet. So, you know, the bigger or the more kind of detailed the bevel, the more segments you're going to need to have to kind of compensate for that. We then have curve, and curve is like super interesting. You know what, if I just sort of pull this over and we can see this a little better. Maybe pull them up. Right, so now we've set the curve. Again, we have our size and we have our segments, but we also have this new kind of F graph, this new graph in here, which has got this line in it. So if you watch this bevel, as I move this, this point here, so now we can kind of draw our own curve and create our own bevel. And it's really fun to play with. Again, you know, size, segments. So we have solid, and another really fun one, which is the one that we're going to be using, is step. And so we can adjust the size of our steps, and we can also adjust segments, so then works as the number of steps. So if we have 1 and we set it to 1, we then have 1 step, or we can increase that and make more. There's also one more tiny thing I wanted to show you in here. If you're not sure about kind of the bevels, or maybe like the F curve seems a little bit like, well, I want it to look like this, but I don't know how to adjust the curve, we have presets, wonderful presets. And they are a really nice either starting position, or they're really nice on their own. So if we grab one of these, let's grab this kind of inner bevel. And they're like a good place to start because they're fully adjustable. So I mean, this is like way too big because my my extrude's quite small. So we could then adjust this down, and then we can adjust our actual kind of curve still, our curve spline here, just to kind of perfect it a bit more. So yeah, they're super handy. So let me just go back to the step, and then we're going to go 1, and this is what we're going to go with. This is what we're going to end up with. So we've got it in step, we've got the size as 1 and the segment as 1. And this is the first part. This was this kind of Maxon text here. So now if I switch on my shelf unit, now let's just reposition this. So you know what? It's actually a little bit too big still. So if we go into our text spline, adjust our height, let's set it to 35. I'm just going to make that a little bit smaller. Cool. Now we just want to position this onto our shelf, and let's pull it over, and then let's rotate it a little just to add a bit of variation. So it's not quite on the shelf. Just get in here and pull it down. Cool. Right, so part one done. Now let's take a look at one of the different generators. This time we're going to make our vase kind of thing here. And so what we're going to do, again, I'm just going to group this just so everything's kind of nice and neat, and we're going to call it Maxon text. Cool. Right, and I'm just going to hide both of these now, just so I have somewhere where I can work on my spline. So when it comes to creating this vase, we want to draw our own spline for this. And so I don't want to do this in perspective mode, because if I do, I can't quite kind of keep it flat on one plane. But we can do it if we draw it in one of our other views. So I mean, it would be right or front would be kind of like the most like useful views. And I'm gonna do it in the front. So I've just hit that button there just to kind of full size the front view. And now we're going to draw our spline. So I apologize now for the state of my spline drawing. Please don't judge me. So I've grabbed the spline pen in the spline menu. I'm just going to come in here. And now I'm going to, so really quickly as well. So I'm going to be clicking and dragging. And so I'm holding my mouse button down and dragging my mouse, and that's how we get these nice kind of like Bezier handles, as opposed to kind of if I don't do that. So if I just click and I'm not holding the mouse button down, click again and click again, we get that kind of hard interpolation. So those are kind of the different ways of drawing the spines. But we're going to stick to kind of, holding, so we get that nice kind of Bezier edge. Right, so let me just kind of and then round. Right, okay, cool. I'm just going to hit escape to close it, and then what I'm actually going to do with my spline pen, I'm just going to then carry on this drawing down here, just so we have, oh well, that was bad, wasn't it? Just so we have this nice kind of inner, see, I told you my spline drawing is not great. Let's just kind of leave that in there. That, that's good enough.
It's as good as my dolphin creation. It's fine.
No, your dolphin looked good. This is not. Right, okay. It'll work. It's good enough. It's good enough for now. Right, and the only thing I want to do, so as Matt showed us, we need to make sure these two kind of points are at x0. And so that when it kind of like does the lathe and around, we're not going to get some of that weird kind of geometry. So I'm going to set that to 0, and I'm just going to make sure my top one is set to 0 as well. And then let's see, God, what this looks like. Right, okay, so this is what it looks like for now. Now, if we grab our lathe, and again, we need to make sure our spline is a child of our lathe. So we're just going to click and hold it, and then we're just going to drop it into our lathe. And so we have our vase, or vase, or, you know, however you say it. And we can still adjust these points if we want to. And so I'm actually going to right click, and we can go soft interpolation, and that will just make it nice and smooth. Cool. Right, let's see how big or small I drew this. Right, so in order to move this, I'm gonna make sure I have my lathe selected, and then I should be able to move that up, and then we can just kind of reposition this on the shelf. So I'm just, you know, going to my 4 views just so I can get that right on that line.
I mean, we do have some nice new placement tools inside of Cinema 4D for dynamic placement, which may be a little bit helpful for people to be doing that. And we can take a look at that a bit later. Just a quick question. Someone has said, what do you do if some of the letters don't touch the surface, but others do? Can you adjust the Y position of the letters individually? And I don't think you can you?
Oh, no, I don't think so. Let me just turn that off just so we can actually see what we're doing.
I don't think the kerning allows for Y positions.
No, not that. Unless anyone else knows, but no, I've never. I suppose I've also never needed to.
No, I haven't.
I guess there would the way around it, which would obviously be a bit of a nightmare. You could create a text spline for each of the letters, and this would obviously be so. If we kind of go new project, you could create this. This would be a faff, but you could do it. Text spline.
Apparently kerning does, and separate the letters and then shift the baselines. But say I've never used kerning in that way, if I'm honest.
So yeah, that.
You can do it, yeah, but can you do it for individual letters? You can shift the baseline, but can you shift it for individual letters?
Yes, you can. Right, so I've set this, so the little kerning, if we do a drop down, so 0 and 1, so that is going to be my first letter. We can then adjust the baseline of it, and let's see if this works. 1 to 2, yes. Adjust the baseline. Yes. Okay, cool. So yeah, you just have to make sure.
Thank you, people.
Yeah, nice. Thanks, guys. So yeah, drop down your kerning, check that on, and then depending on the letter that you're doing, or you could do like a group of letters. So if we did 2 to 4, yeah, and then you just adjust your baseline of those. Cool. That was a cool little tip.
We learned stuff today. Thank you very much.
Right, let me just get back to here. Right, so what we got? Oh my god, we've got 20 minutes left. Okay, right. So let's make our lava lamp. Yes, let's do that. Cool. So I'm just going to hide my bars and hide my Maxon text, but I'm going to leave my shelf unit, and there's a reason why just for now. Right, okay, so I wanted to show you a little trick if you want to use a reference image when kind of like creating some geometry inside of Cinema 4D. So I kind of went onto Google, and I just sort of, because I want to make a lava lamp. And I could, you can make it by eye, but sometimes it's nice to use a reference image. So I literally just grabbed any reference image off of Google. And then I'm going to build this again in my front view. So I'm going to enlarge my front view. And what we can do, I'll just get in on there. We can go to Options and Configure, or you can press Shift V, which will take you to the shortcut version. So if I hit Configure, so by default, you'll come up and it will look like this. And inside here, we can, change a whole bunch of things, a whole bunch of, effects and, our safe frames, which are like the grayed out area, so you know where you're rendering. But we also have this back option, and this back option allows us to load an image on sort of like the back plate of this front view. So if I just hit my three dots, my lava lamp ref, if I open that, we now have this as a reference image inside of our just the back plate of our front view. So if we go back to our perspective, it's not there, so it's not going to get in the way. And then what we can do, I can adjust the size, and that's the reason I left the shelf visible, is so I can kind of decide what a suitable size would be. So now I can have my shelf unit. Now I know that this kind of is going to be fine. And we can use this reference image to now define our geometry and create it much easier without having to do it from scratch. We've kind of guessing. So I'm going to use the loft for this, and I'm going to create the entire shape out of a whole bunch of circle splines. But I'm going to create it in 3 different kind of lofts. I see 3 different objects. So let me grab my circle and let me see where that's come in. So I'm going to apologize now because it's not super handy. It's not super kind of visible. So yeah, I do apologize for that, but we will be getting in closer. So I've made my circle spline. My plane is XZ, and I'm just going to position it up top, and we're going to make this a lot smaller. So let's go 5 centimeters. And I'm just going to come right in here so we can see what we're doing. Right, so now what we want to do, we want to match this shape and size with a whole bunch of circle splines. So at the moment, this one's way too big. So I'm holding my T, which gives me my scale. And I'm just going to click and drag and scale this down. Okay, so this is the important bit. So what we're going to do, we're going to duplicate our circle splines, and then we're going to scale them up or down dependent. So what we're going to do, so I'm going to click my green axis handle. I'm going to press the Command key, and I've still got both pressed down. I'm going to drag it down, and so we can see we have our copy. Everything's still pressed down. I'm then going to let go of my mouse and then let go of my Command key. And now we have a second circle spline. And now we can hold T to scale it up. So let's do that again, because we've got to make a few anyway. So we're going to click our axis handle, hold our Command key with both held down. I'm then going to pull my mouse down to pull my circle spline down. I'm then going to let go of my mouse. Then I'm going to let go of my Command key. Then I'm going to hold T to scale it up. And then what we want to do, we just want to make a whole bunch of these using that exact same technique. So because I'm conscious of time, I'm just going to super quickly run through these. Now we've gone through it kind of a little bit slower at the beginning. So all we're doing is matching. What I do as well, because my reference image may not necessarily be dead center, I could have tweaked that, but I'm actually just matching it to one of the sides. I'm not too worried about matching it to both. Cool, right. So now if we come up here, so we have, what is that, about 9 circle splines. So if we come into here, we can see what we've just kind of created. And so we can already kind of see the shape that it's making up. And now what we can do, let me pull that back down. We can now grab our third generator, which is our loft. And then all we need to do is we have to make sure we grab all of our circle splines that we want to put inside this generator. So I've just clicked the first one, held the shift key and clicked the last one. And you wouldn't see they're all highlighted because they will all be orange. Now, if I grab them, it will grab all of them, even though I've only kind of like, my mouse was only over the first one, and I can hold it over the loft and then let go. And now we can see we have our geometry. Have it come back into here. We can see that, you know, it's pretty good. It's made up this this thing. So I've just twisted that. Never mind. Right. So because I'm a little bit conscious of time, what I'm going to do. So the rest of the lava lamp is made in the exact same way. So if we go into my original one, what I'm going to do, I'm going to grab my lava lamp. I'm just going to copy and paste this in, not to that one. Here we go. Right, so I'm going to paste this in here. That's going to be up there somewhere. Yeah. Right, so let me just delete. You know what? Let me just hide this one. Bring back all of our other bits and bobs so we can see this.
Welcome to Blue Peter, and here's one we made earlier.
Yes, I'm so sorry. I wouldn't normally do this, but I'm conscious that there's a couple of other things I want to show, and it's 1/4 but it's the exact same technique. So we've just seen it. So if I just raise this lava lamp up a little bit, so we can see we have our first, so our top bit. If I just switch off all the lofts, we can see what they're all made up of. And so if I sort of hide this one and this one, so this was the top bit, and that was only made up of actually 4 circle splines. We then have this middle part here, which was all these ones in there. So yeah, the exact same kind of technique that we just went through, and this next one was quite a few. So yeah, cool. Right, so yeah, actually I do want to hide that one. Right, cool. So couple more bits. So let's have a look at the sweep. So we're going to make like our neon, a bit of like a neon sign. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to create sort of like a back plate for it to rest on. So what we're going to do, we're going to make this a lot smaller. So my X I've set to 60, my Y I'm going to set to 30, and then my Z I'm going to make super small, something like 1 centimeter. And if we just pull this up, now we can grab another text spline. And again, it's going to come in pretty big. And this time we're going to write the word love. But yeah, you can write whatever you want in there. And I'm just going to, so you want kind of like a smooth, thin font. I ended up with this one, which wasn't like super smooth. But if you have one that's got like nice rounded edges, it will make this effect like really, really, really nice. And then again, I'm just going to set my alignment to middle, and I'm going to set my height to 30. So let me come in here, move that out. So you know what, that's a little bit too small. Let's go 35. I'm just going to position that somewhere like that. Okay, cool. So the way that we can use, I'll click off of it for now, just so we can see it a little clearer. So we're going to use the sweep here, and we're going to, you know, turn this into some really nice like neon tube geometry. So let me grab my sweep, and I'm going to drop my text spline into my sweep, and nothing's going to happen straight away, because as Matt showed us, when it comes to the sweep, we need 2 splines. The first spline, which is our text spline, which is going to define, you know, the shape that our sweep is going to make up. But we also need to have a spline that's going to make the shape of our actual geometry that is swept around this text spline. And so really simply, we're going to grab a circle, and by default, our radius is set to 200, which is definitely way too big. So I'm going to set it to 1. So I now have a circle spline with a radius of 1 centimeter. And what we're going to do, we're going to put that between our sweep and our text spline. So I'm just going to click and hold it. And we now want our arrow kind of pointing that way, and it's going to go in between. Cool, so I can already see that this radius is still too big. So I'm going to go to 0.5 just to make it, a little bit smoother. Right, so now we go back to my sweep and we just pull that in a little bit. So like a really cool thing you could do with this. So this was sort of like a slightly basic version of like a neon sign. But if you got like the original text spline and extruded it and then did this on top, we could then you could then use like a cylinder and it would work like a little screw. So it looked like it's kind of screwed onto a back plate. Yeah, that should be right. Cool. So there is our little neon sign. Let's see. Yeah, so it's close enough to the floor there. So let me grab all these bits. I'm just going to position this over. Aha. So what we're going to do, I'm going to group them inside a null. And we're going to move that null over. And we're going to rotate it a little just by hitting my R key, just so it looks a bit nicer. I'm just going to call this neon sign in capitals, apparently. Cool. So yeah, the other part, if we take a look at this again, so Matt showed us how to, create our dolphin already. So if I find this in here, so we're just going to grab that. Make sure I go to the right one this time. I'm just going to move that up. And so all I did was it's the exact same, subdivision surface model that he created. And then I just made a little cube and a cylinder, just some standard primitive shapes, so to make it look like it's got a bit of a stand. Cool, right, so really quickly, the final bit, I suppose I don't need to show, the Illustrator side because I've already gone through that, but I've got, our good old Maxon logo here, Maxon 1 logo. And I can just drag and drop that in. So let me find my desktop. And so we have our Maxon logo test.ai. Let me just pull that in. And I'm just going to copy that. So that's my logo thing. So this is super cool if you are used to using Illustrator and you make logos and you're just kind of getting into 3D. Turning those logos into 3D is just super fun. And then when it comes to the MoGraph week, we're going to be doing some super fun things with our logos. Cool, right, so let's just make this a little bigger. I'm just going to move this over here. So, we have our really cool Maxon logo here. And we're going to do the same trick. So we're going to grab the extrude and we're just going to drop the Maxon logo spline into the extrude. And it is way, way too big. So let's set this to maybe 5 centimeters. And then we can maybe just rotate that actually. Let's rotate that there, and we can just move that down. So we have our really funky Maxon logo, kind of, I don't know, object on the shelf. And then we're going to add a little bevel as well to that, just to add a little bit of nice rounding. And that'll be nice when we add some light in next week and we add some textures, it's going to kind of catch those shadows really nicely. Cool, so there we have it. We've sort of recreated-ish from scratch, sort of run out of time a little bit with the lava lamp, but hey, and the other bit is these are just small versions of this. I felt there was a big gap there. So yeah, I just kind of duplicated these and made a bunch of little Maxon logo tokens. Cool. So are there any questions on that?
No, weirdly. Oh, sorry, there's a question about instances. Does the cube instance only work on the cubes? The instance object instances whatever you have selected. So actually, Elly, if you demonstrate copying that logo, the Maxon logo to the shelf above, what you do is you select the main object that you want to create an instance of, and then go to your instance tool, create the instance, and it will create a copy of whatever you have selected. So now we can move that up and move that around. You can scale it as well, but you need to change your tool on the left-hand side from model mode to object mode. And then, so you click the little drop down where it says model mode, and then you change it to that, go to your scale tool, and you can change the size of that. If you don't, it won't let you, because an instance is a direct copy, and it says, well, I can't change the scale of what I'm instancing, but I can change the size of the instance. It's a little bit of a tricksy thing there, but it is a really useful thing to do.
Yeah, definitely comes in handy for sure, especially when you've got like a whole bunch of the same element.
Yeah, there's a couple of things I would like to show super quickly, if it's okay, as we have a whole 5 minutes. So if you throw the screen back at me.
Yeah, absolutely. It is on its way. Oh,
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, so obligatory question, can you see my screen?
yes.
Perfect. Okay. One question that came up super fast was, is subdivision surface best for organic stuff? And the answer is yes, it is very good for organic stuff, but it is also really good for non-organic stuff because of something that I just simply didn't have time to show, which is subdivision surface weighting. Now, if I create a cube and I create a subdivision surface, I make my cube editable and I put my subdivision surface in there, and then I'm going to create 2 more copies by control dragging, not the cube, the subdivision surface, so that I have 3 of exactly the same. They are subdivision surfaces with 3 editable cubes. Subdivision surface, as I have said, subdivides and softens the outside and rounds this out. I can control how much that rounds using a little tool down here. I need my cube selected, and then I have the tools down the bottom. I need the polygon. I need one of these selected, so I'm going to go for points first, and I'm going to choose my first cube, and I'm going to choose loop selection, and I'm going to select all of the points along the top. So when they are white, they are highlighted. Click, they are now orange to make sure that I've got them. This tool down here is subdivision surface weighting. And if I click to activate the tool and in a blank space, click and drag holding my left mouse button from left to right, I can control the percentage that is being, the weight that the subdivision surface is having on those points, from 0%, meaning that they are basically back where the original cube is, to 100%. Oops. I need to turn the subdivision weight on, to 100%, meaning that they are as weighted as they can get. And you can stop at any particular point. So you've got full control over creating pointier points. If I go to cube number 2, and I go to my edge mode on the left and loop selection down the bottom, and I select the top loop of that, so that's all the way around. Again, subdivision surface weighting tool, click in a blank space, click and drag from left to right, I now have a completely flat surface, but I have the rounded edges. And again, so it meets the original face of that, but the edges remain rounded. Again, this is something that's really useful for possibly creating sharper edges without needing more geometry. And last but not least, I'm just going to go to my polygon mode, my move tool, select the top one, click and drag with my point to select a completely flat, to get a completely flat surface. And that means that that is exactly back where it was before. Okay, so that's a way that you can use the subdivision surface for creating not necessarily all flowing and organic things, and you need a definitive stop. My next exceptionally super quick one is enabling you to place things onto shelves. So if I've got a cube and I want to place this on a shelf, yes, we can use our views, and that's one nice way of doing it. But with S24, we now have the dynamic place tools, which means I can select with my cube, I can click on a plane and I can choose where this is going to create itself. So if I create a sphere and I click with my dynamic place tools, sorry, my place tools, I can click a surface and you can see that that is sitting on that surface. I can also use my dynamic place tools and I can move this around and you can see it's trying to get wherever the gizmo is. So this is another useful tool for seating things on top of others. And that was all I wanted to show, exceptionally fast, just because I saw the opportunity and I thought that might be a good thing to show. Do we have any final questions before we wrap up?
A couple. Kent was wondering, is there a shortcut key for subdivision weighting? Do you know?
There is a shortcut key, and I was wondering if someone's going to mark that. If you hold down full stop on your subdivision surfaces, to be honest, that's what I use. I often forget that this tool exists. So if I select one of these and I select that surface, if I hold down full stop on my keyboard and hold it down and click and drag from left to right, I have a sticky shortcut, which means that it stays on that tool until I let go. So again, it just works with all of them. Hold down full stop, click and drag from left to right, and it swaps between the tools that I have. Yes, sorry, Steve. The American is period on a keyboard. Yes, so I'm the English full stop or the period on a, for the American terminology.
One final quick thing before we, I was going to run through what we're doing next week.
Okay.
Amina was asking, can we create instances of an STS model, and would those instances also update when we change the original?
Yes, they would, absolutely. Let's see if I can find my dolphin of joy. So let's create a dolphin. Let's select that, and I'm going to create an instance and move it over there. And I'm going to create another copy, and let's select my subdivision surface and let's create another instance and move it down. And just to prove a point, let's go to object mode and scale them. And now everything is a direct reference of these. So if I want to change this one, you can see that they all change as well. Cool, there we go.
Cool.
Right, I will throw the screen back at you very quickly for a summary and to catch what we will be doing next week.
Yes. Yeah, sorry, so much to show everyone all the time. It's hard not to overrun. Right, can everyone see my screen real quick? This will be 2 minutes and then you're
Yes.
free. Right, cool. So yeah, really quickly, again, if you go onto the Maxon website under events, if you're ever looking for the project files, you can click on any of the beginners workshop like parts, and the link is just on the bottom. And so if we kind of, once you click that link, it opens up this Dropbox, and each week we're uploading one. So kind of week 1 is, last week's project file, and we then have week 2, and they're always going to be on there before the session. So week 2, the modeling one, which was today. So if you want to grab that, feel free to. And then next week's one, so when it comes to lighting and texturing, we'll make sure that's on there for tomorrow, and it's all just the same link. We also pinged the link for the unlisted YouTube playlist. So yeah, as Matt said earlier, they are all being recorded. So, they're all going to be there for you on this unlisted playlist. And really quickly, so we did originally plan to get to some volume building, because that's, another part of modeling, but we didn't quite get around to it. However, not too long ago, me, Matt, and Darren and Jonas, 2 of the other trainers for Maxon, did a whole volume builder workflow series, which is on our Maxon training team YouTube channel. So if you're interested in understanding about like the volume builder and how you can use that, we go through, there's 4 whole hours there of a whole bunch of like super cool stuff.
I don't know what you mean.
Sorry, my watch is talking to me. Okay, cool. Yeah, just before it didn't know what I was talking about apparently, so it's all right, people don't tend to. Where is my little presentation thing? Right, so next week, so yeah, week 3, materials and lighting. So this kind of topic is going to be really interesting, full of a whole bunch of stuff. We're going to look at creating materials from scratch, We're going to look at, you know, the whole standard versus physical conversation and kind of what that exactly means and what PBR is, if we don't know what that is. We might do a little brief intro to Redshift, but don't worry if you're not someone that uses Redshift. It's not going to be kind of, the majority of the session will be native cinema, don't worry. We're going to talk about HDRI images, what they are, why we use them, why we love them. We're going to look at lighting, luminance, and then we might even, you know, touch on some volumetric lighting. And, you know, the image on the right, we're going to look at texturing and lighting the shot we made today. So feel free to grab the original one off there, and we can, you know, if you are following along next week, you can do it straight from that one. And yeah, again, thank you so much for being here, everyone. Like, it's like, we really look forward to this in our week. It's so nice to kind of interact with you all live. Like, first of all, thanks to everyone who is here live with us. Like, it's so nice, but also to everyone who, you know, if the time zone doesn't suit, are watching this recording. Like, we really appreciate it. And yeah, all the questions make it so much more fun for us as well. And we hope you're enjoying it, and we hope, you know, you're finding it beneficial. Yeah, any little final words from you, Matt?
No, just thank you to all of the lovely people that are saying thank you to us. It's very much appreciated. And as I say, we do actually really enjoy doing these. They're a fun giggle. You know, we're aware that our speeds are interesting at times, because it's really difficult when we go, this is a beginner's course and what can we show you, and our answer is we want to show you everything.
We get so excited showing you guys so much stuff.
And then we're like, no, we need to actually like stop and show things that we can actually put into a time frame. So yeah, just thank you very much for all of you, and I'll look forward to seeing you guys all next week.
Lovely. Right, see you all next week. Bye.
All right, for those of you, don't forget that the YouTube link is currently in the chat. So in our little chat link, it says, you know, not the question side, but the chat side, we have a link to the recordings and a link to the project files. So we'll let you grab that before you go, and we will see you all next week.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.